Hello and welcome to this video on the difference between vanilla from beans or that generated synthetically through a chemical reaction. There is a proposition by some people that they can tell the difference between real and synthesized vanilla. The truth is most people cannot. This has in fact been tested repeatedly on both average people and, well, supposed experts. In both cases they had a low probability of identifying the real or synthetic vanilla flavor. In fact, there is no real-world equivalent to Erina Nakiri. For the most part, it's worse than that. In fact, it's much worse than that. They would have been better off flipping a coin, as their performance is less than 50% accurate. Let's start with the thing that makes vanilla. It is a compound called vanillin. It is a truly creative and original name that must have been decided upon by a committee of bureaucrats. It is a molecule made up of several important groups. These groups include aldehydes, hydroxyls, and ethers. And the molecule itself comes under the broader category of phenolic aldehyde. In terms of synthetic vanilla, what you basically get is just vanillin. That is, the solution is practically 100% vanilla in terms of the active ingredient. The manufacturer may add colouring to make it more brown or look more like natural vanilla. Other than this, it is just vanillin suspended in water to add flavour to food. For the purposes of, most synthetically generated vanilla, it is just that, largely synthesized. It was originally made as a byproduct of wood, and specifically the lignin within wood pulp within the paper industry, but that's fallen out of favour. The newer and arguably most common method is based on guaiacol. The most significant method used, and again we're talking about the most preferred, is a two-step reaction. The reaction begins with glycol, and to this you add glyoxylic acid. You then have this react, and it reacts because there's a attraction between the electrons, and you basically substitute the aromatic ring from one to the other. This creates a intermediary product called vanilla mandelic acid. You then add 4-hydroxy-3-methylxiphenylglycolic acid to this, and it creates vanillin. That occurs due to decarboxylation. The oxygen within it reacts and it causes you to lose the carboxyl group. This sounds complicated, but relatively speaking, it's much easier than what we're about to describe in terms of natural vanilla. And that is because natural vanilla is considerably more complex. The first reason it's more complex is that there are three kinds of vanilla: the Bourbon Madagascar, Mexican, and Tahitian varieties. Although they're all largely similar in that unless you're specifically looking for the differences, you wouldn't notice them, they do have distinguishing profiles, let's say. Bourbon Madagascar vanilla generally has a thinner pod, a richer and sweeter flavour. Mexican vanilla has a more smooth flavour, and the Tahitian vanilla has the thickest pods that have more aromatics but less flavour, at least comparatively. And this is where we need to point out, vanilla is a bean pod from an orchid-like plant, and this means that they are very slow growing. Because they are slow growing, you have an issue in how much can be generated at any given time, and of course they are a relatively new crop. They have been grown in Mexico for a very long time, and for the most part, this is where most of them are grown. Mexico down through to parts of South America. Mexico itself is arguably the largest producer of natural vanilla. The pods themselves are harvested when green, and they're left to ferment for a time. This is mostly to allow the bean pod to dry and the flavours to grow. Generally speaking, the process follows the following broad steps. First, you have the collection of the seed pods. The seed pods are then quickly cooked in hot water, otherwise known as blanching. The pods are then left for 1 to 2 weeks in the sun, where they not only dry, but all the moisture evaporates off. So this is more similar to dehydrating than just drying. The individual pods are then packed into airtight boxes in which the moisture remaining in them sweats out. And this is what turns the previously green pod into the dark brown pod. Enzymes within it also start to break down the pod itself, and this begins releasing some of the vanillin within it. The pods are then kept in storage for several months to further develop their flavour. The physical process and somewhat artful method used to turn your raw, freshly harvested vanilla beans into the product that everybody knows today is somewhat of an art form, as said, and it does involve effort, knowledge, and a lot of time. This is where the next stage in the naturally occurring vanilla pipeline needs to be mentioned, let's say. Specifically, the extraction process is somewhat different depending on what we're talking about. Vanilla from natural sources can be used as the whole bean, the bean inside scraped out, and turned into a paste or a flavour extract. The process of curing or fermenting the vanilla bean creates hundreds of flavours in the process of this, but these will, for the most part, get extracted, at least initially, and the bean or bean parts are used. This leads us to what is ultimately 4 different products alongside the vanilla beans: vanilla extract, vanilla paste, vanilla essence, and vanilla flavour. Of these, the last is synthesized. The options given, you have the most expensive as the raw bean, or at least as the most expensive by weight, arguably volume as well, and that is because this is the bean that has relatively a small volume, but needs to be handled with care when shipping internationally. It also involves a lot of processing. As a result, they cost considerably. Then the paste. This is just the bean insides scraped out, often with some sugar or something similar added to bulk it out and make it easier to handle. This is the next cheapest option. It's somewhat less precious and difficult to transport than the beans themselves, but since the majority of it is just the bean paste, which has taken a long time to create, you're going to still pay considerably more. Then you have vanilla extract, and this is arguably the next cheapest, since it is the vanilla bean, and arguably the husk of the vanilla bean from generating paste is soaked in something like ethanol to extract the flavour vanillin, along with the other various flavours generated during the fermentation process. And then we have the vanilla essence, and this is often the synthesized vanillin flavour. You may also find vanilla flavour without any of the other marketing we've mentioned, and this is often added as part of other products, such as in Coke, cake mixes, porridge, and more. This is not necessarily sold as a vanilla essence, but rather just as a vanilla flavour. And now for the difference. There isn't one. The 2 molecules are the same. The way you get there is different, but the end result is the same. This is why just about every person cannot tell the difference between natural and synthetic vanilla. In practice, this is more true. Most of the aromatics in real vanilla products just cannot survive the process of cooking. They are too volatile. This means that once you go and add your vanilla to a cake or anything else that's going to have even a small amount of heat, be stored for more than a day or so or anything else, they will disappear, and what will be left in there is just vanillin, and nobody will tell the difference. This leads us to arguably why synthetic vanilla is necessary, or arguably synthetic vanillin specifically. Unfortunately, only 2,000 tons of vanilla are produced each year, while about 12,000 tons are purchased or required. That means there is an approximate gap of 10,000 tons, and these are made via synthesis of vanillin. It is the only way to meet the demand for vanilla flavour without drastically increasing the farming of vanilla and the orchards that produce it. But doing so would require massive land clearances and huge changeover in the production process of vanilla, and that's just not going to happen. It's already hard enough to have vanilla growing and all the other work that goes into training someone to ferment it and develop it into a sellable product, let alone trying to increase that by 6-fold in very short order. This is also why vanilla as a natural product is something of a premium, versus the synthetically generated product, which is often seen as inferior in some respects, and because it is more generic, often much cheaper. But you don't really gain or lose anything from using one over the other than bragging rights for using the natural product and arguably paying considerably more, or by simply saving money by buying the synthesized version. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it interesting, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please post any comments, questions, or suggestions you have below.